8th to order. I know we are missing a couple of members. I suspect that Public Health and Welfare is running late this morning, so hopefully they'll be joining us soon. Please note that fiscal notes for Senate Bill 400 and 402 have been added to your files. It appears to me like we have some students on the front row who are either skipping school or serving as pages. Senator Dietrich, do you have any idea which?
I am very pleased. I have 3 pages today. Their names are Thomas, Audrey, and Emma, and they are from Washburn Rural Middle School and J. Scheidler Elementary.
I had a feeling they were pages because I can't imagine skipping school and coming to the Capitol. But welcome. We're glad you're here. First item on the agenda is a hearing on Senate Bill 400. We will open that hearing and we will ask Eileen to give us an overview.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. Senate Bill 400 would create 2 new provisions and modify 2 statutes in the Kansas Uniform Trust Code, as well as amending the definition of resident trust contained in KSA 79-32, 109. New Section 1 of the bill specifies conditions under which the rule against perpetuities is inapplicable to a trust, exceptions that might be made to the rule against accumulations when the rule against perpetuities is inapplicable to such trusts, and the types of trusts to which the section applies. New Section 2 of the bill creates what is sometimes called a decanting statute. This section specifies that the contents of a trust may, at the discretion of the trustee, be decanted into a new trust, and the conditions, limitations, and requirements of such a transaction and of the trustee. Section 3 of the bill amends KSA 58A-111 and adds 3 new items to the list of matters that may be settled by a non-judicial settlement between interested persons, and these items are the interpretation or construction of the terms of the trust, direction to a trustee to refrain from performing a particular act, or the grant of any necessary or desirable power to a trustee, assumably to perform a particular act, and the governing law of the trust. Section 4 of the bill amends KSA 58A-414 and increases the total value of the trust at which the trustee may terminate a trust if the trustee concludes that the value of the trust property is insufficient to justify the cost of administration. And Section 5 of the bill amends KSA 79-32, 109 of the Kansas Tax Code, and it redefines a resident trust to mean a trust that was created by or consisting of property owned by a person domiciled in the state on the date the trust or portion of the trust became irrevocable and has at least one income beneficiary who on the last day of the taxable year was a resident of the state. And the bill would become effective upon publication in the statute book. However, there is late-breaking news, so before I say that I can stand for questions, if you have questions on new Section 1, 2, or 5, let me just state that I've been informed that new Sections 1 and 2 have been requested to be stricken from the bill, and new Section 5 has been requested to be amended. So if you have questions on those, just forget about those. Kind of like I'm going to forget the time that I spent drafting those. And with that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Eileen. I know you spent a considerable amount of time in law school on trusts, and so.
It, was so much fun that I've tried desperately to forget all that time.
Committee, are there any questions of Eileen? Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Eileen. On Section 3, you are adding in the direction to a trustee to refrain from performing a particular act or the grant, and we're putting that in and making that available for non-judicial action. Layman's term, I know it's a little rough there, but what kind of acts are we talking about here?
I'm going to let the conferee testify to that. I can answer it for you, but it might be better coming from the conferee.
Any additional questions of Eileen? I see none. Thank you. We will now turn our attentions to the proponents. Please welcome Will Bergman, who is with Midwest Trust Company out of Overland Park, Kansas. Will, welcome to the committee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for taking the time today for me to be able to discuss Senate Bill 400. I'm a member of staff at Midwest Trust Company, which is a non-depository trust company that's located in Overland Park, Kansas. The goals for Senate Bill 400 is to bring high-quality jobs to Kansas, to ensure that Kansas fiduciaries are competing fairly, and that the Kansas Trust Code can be modernized. So some brief background on corporate trustees in the state of Kansas. There are 12 independent trust companies in the state that are regulated by the Kansas OSBC, and there are 33 banks with trust powers. These organizations provide valuable services to residents of the state. Overall, there are $64 billion of trust assets administered by those trust companies. And then also, as fiduciaries, we're obligated to do what is in the best interest of our clients. And that is a governing principle over all of our activities. Regarding sections 1 and 2, we had some discussions with other interested parties, and we would like to strike those from the bill. I know that Eileen and staff has worked very diligently on these two, and this is going to be the start of the process for us to end up changing the rule against perpetuities and also creating a decanting statute in the state. And I appreciate their help. I look forward to working with Joe Molina and the members of the Kansas Bar Association, as well as the Judicial Council on those provisions. Regarding Section 3, which is non-judicial settlement agreements, oftentimes non-judicial settlement agreements are utilized to fix older trust documents that were drafted before changes in laws or changes in fiduciary principles. So, for instance, when you ask the question on what type of actions or activities, sometimes there may be a requirement within a trust document that maybe it was drafted in the 80s and they said very defensive principles. The settlor, that's the person who created the trust document, wanted to only invest in treasuries. And we need to expand that principle because right now treasuries are at a significantly lower interest rate than they were in the 80s. And so if everyone agrees, it's unanimous, trustee, if the settlor is still alive, settlor, beneficiaries agree on these activities, it's very unlikely that a lawsuit will occur. And so these are always slam dunk cases where everyone agrees, and that's why they are a preferred method of changing and modifying trust documents right now. And other states have been taking advantage of expanding those to allow for their trust or to allow for their court system not to be as clogged up with these small, minute details, allow it for the larger system, larger problems. Regarding the Uneconomic Trust Statute, which is section 4, this was originally drafted in 2002. With inflation over the last 20 years, it's become, the $100,000 mark has been harder for us to attain. We request that $250,000 is replacing that $100,000. Oftentimes, these types of trusts are always with good beneficiaries that we're trying to terminate because, or there are multiple different beneficiaries. So normally in spray trusts, so maybe there's 20 beneficiaries, it's $175,000, they own some property. We are trying to distribute it out to all those beneficiaries in the best way possible. But again, our fiduciary principles override all of those activities. We are obligated to do what's in the best interest of our clients. Regarding the resident trust definition in Kansas, currently it is overly broad in preventing us from administering trusts in Kansas for beneficiaries and residents of other states. We request that there be a change to the proposed language, and that is following multiple conversations with members of the estate planning bar and residents of our state. And we're actually planning on synthesizing the two different definitions, the proposed language and our current language, so that there's less change to people's estate plans. There's not a run on estate planners to try and change prior to the statute being created. So we request that it's changed to resident trust means a trust which is administered in the state and was created by or consisting of property owned by a person domiciled in the state on the date of the trust or portion of the trust becomes irrevocable. So that is a synthesis of the two different portions. And I appreciate staff's help on that. Right now, Midwest Trust provides services in multiple different states. And over the last few years, we have not been hiring staff members in Kansas except for to replace old staff members because of this law. So right now, we have a headquarters in Overland Park, but we provide services for banks all across the state. We've hired in the last 12 months 8 new trust officers or client-facing individuals who are providing these services in either Missouri, Illinois, or Ohio, Tennessee, or Washington. states which have preferential treatment on this definition. I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to take the time to discuss these definitions today and these changes to the UTC. I can stand for any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Committee, are there questions? I see none. Thank you. Committee, let me call your attention to proponent written-only testimony from Joe Carnes with the Trust Division with the Kansas Bankers Association. We have neutral oral testimony from Joseph Molina with the Kansas Bar Association. Joseph, welcome to the committee.
Morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Molina with the Kansas Bar Association. This is actually my first time ever after 15 years of being in FI&I. I have never been more nervous. At the outset, I'd like to express our gratitude towards the Bankers Association and Midwest Trust. They reached out to us when they started proposing these things, proposing Senate Bill 400. And when you look at it, Senate Bill 400 is going to be amending what we haven't amended in 20 years, right? Significantly amended in 20 years, which is the Kansas Uniform Trust Code. If you think about the Kansas Uniform Trust Code, I'd like you guys to imagine a jigsaw puzzle with hundreds of pieces. And in 2002, we actually created this thing. We got together with the Judicial Council, members of the Kansas Bar Association that practice in this area, and we created a trust system, which is can be complex. And so when we make changes to that, we want to be very mindful of the types of changes we do, because it does affect a vast majority of my members who practice in this area. And that's why I am very appreciative of Midwest Trust and Kansas Bankers bringing this towards us so we can actually work some of those things. It came to my attention that the Kansas Judicial Council is working on an amendment to a portion of the Uniform Trust Code called the decanting statutes. The language I believe we have in Senate Bill 400 is probably based off of Missouri statutes, whereas the language the Kansas Judicial Council is using is off a uniform code, which is very similar to what we already have in place under the Kansas Uniform Trust Code. Not to say one is better than the other, not to say that they won't fit within this jigsaw puzzle without maybe a little rounding of the edges. The thing is, we don't know. We actually don't know how well it would work one way or the other. And that's why, if you read my written testimony, we're asking just for a little bit extra time. And because of Midwest Trust and the Kansas Bankers reaching out to us and agreeing to do this, I will speak with the Kansas Judicial Council and see if a referral to them to study both of these things and see which is better is warranted. And that is probably the crux of our testimony today. We take no position on anything else. It is policy decisions, which this committee is well aware that they can make, they should make. They can look at the positives and negatives. They can reach out to Midwest Trust if they'd like. I'm happy to put them in contact with some of my folks at the KBA Probate Real Estate and Trust Division. I'm happy to have that open discussion with you and with them. But we just need a little bit of extra time on the decanting and especially the rules against perpetuity part to take a look to see how well it fits within this large jigsaw puzzle. But other than that, I appreciate the time. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take those. You'll probably hear a lot of "I do not know." And I'll get back to you because it is a very complex issue, complex set of statutes. But I'm happy to take your questions back to my folks and get you guys answers as quickly as possible.
Joseph, thank you very much. Committee, are there questions? I see none. Thank you. Are there any additional proponents that wish to speak on the bill? Are there any neutral? Senator Pittman?
I just point out to the committee that in the written testimony, there was a request for a friendly amendment. It's a small thing about regarding a resident trust from I think it's from the Bankers Association. So if you want to take a look at that.
Certainly will. Anyone who wishes to testify in opposition on the bill? Okay, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 400. It appears that we are going to have substantial revisions on the bill, so I will need to see those to determine whether we need to have an additional hearing on the bill. I I know we had testimony that maybe we need to delay a little bit, but I would remind those proponents of the bill that we have less than, a little over 2 weeks left in committees. And next week is already planned, so I think it's important that we be expedient if we want this bill this year. Anything else to come before the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.